Good morning. Thank you all for attending here today at our York Regional Police Headquarters. Today, York Regional Police Chief Jim McSween will be providing the year-to-date crime statistics for the region. Supporting him today are members of the executive leadership team, Deputy Chief Alvaro Almeida, Deputy Chief Cecile Hammond, Deputy Chief Kevin McCloskey, and Acting Deputy Chief Graham Beverly. Following the presentation, we will have an opportunity for questions from the media. Now, I'd like to introduce to you York Regional Police Chief Jim McSween.
Thank you, Kevin. Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending today. To start, I'd like to acknowledge the members of our Police Services Board here with us today, the current chair of the board and the chairman and CEO of the Regional Municipality of York, Mr. Wayne Emerson, and also Mr. Mario Cortellucci, a member of our Police Services Board as well. I'd also like to welcome the Mayor of East Gwillimbury, Virginia Haxon, and former chair of our Police Services Board. This morning, I'm going to be providing an update on the crime trends that have been occurring within York Region in the past few months. I want to start off by stating that York Region remains one of the safest regions in Canada. I know I speak for every member of York Regional Police when I say that we are very proud and privileged to serve the people of this region. Over the course of the summer, I've heard from many residents who are concerned about the rising rates of violent crime. It seems like every day the media is reporting on another shooting or crime where a gun's been used. This weekend alone, we reported another carjacking with a firearm. For our residents and our officers, this is definitely distressing. And we know it can create a feeling that York Region has turned into an unsafe place to live and raise your family. While York Region remains very safe, we are experiencing an increase in crimes involving firearms. I want to take this opportunity to provide you with some of the data so you understand what's taking place within the region and the root cause of gun violence. In 2024, the region has seen a 92% increase in shootings, a total of 46 since January of this year. And we've also seen a 106% increase in carjackings, a total of 64 since January of this year. And equally troubling, since 2019, over a 5-year period, we've seen a 400% increase in carjackings, which are violent and traumatizing for victims and their families. Illegal handguns have become all too easy to access with limited consequences for criminals. And almost all of the guns being used in these crimes are illegal handguns, many of which are being smuggled across the border from the U.S. This surge in gun violence can be attributed to organized crime rings who are obtaining and using illegal handguns to commit a number of offenses. Organized crime is also behind both the nationwide increases in auto thefts that we've all witnessed and the ongoing conflict in the tow truck industry. As we continue to see some tow truck organizations are resorting to both gun violence and arson as a means of threatening their business rivals. The trend in violent crime is a major concern and will continue to be a top priority for York Regional Police for the remaining months of 24 and will continue to be as we move into 2025. I'll continue to invest the resources necessary to combat violent and organized crime to ensure that the residents of York Region are not only kept safe, but they also feel safe. Next month, York Regional Police will be launching 2 major initiatives. The first is the formation of a dedicated carjacking task force right here in York Region, focused solely on investigating carjackings with the goal of identifying and arresting those responsible for victimizing our community. This task force will expand on the existing efforts of YRP's investigative team, who've been leading the province-wide task force as well. The second initiative is the launch of a comprehensive auto theft prevention campaign to educate the community on how they can protect themselves and their vehicles. The name of this operation is Auto Guard 2.0, expanding on the work of a highly successful operation that led to the arrest of dozens responsible for stealing cars in the region last year. This work has a direct impact on community safety. In fact, York Region has seen a decline in auto theft so far in 2024, roughly 33% from this time last year. But make no mistake, the numbers are still troubling. There's work to be done. This is a result of efforts of YRP's investigative unit and frontline members, our policing partners in the Greater Toronto Area, and our strategic partnerships with Canada Border Service Agency, the Port Authority of Montreal, CN Rail, and Canadian Pacific Kansas City Railway, as well as many others. Over the past year, we've launched multiple operations, including AutoGuard, using a three-pronged approach of crime prevention, detection, and apprehension. However, we do understand that we'll need an ongoing continued effort to stem the tide of organized crime and violent crime in our community. In addition to the initiatives that I've outlined, YRP will continue to step up patrols and our increased presence throughout the region. While we continue to see repeat offenders out on bail, reoffend, and commit violent crimes, York Regional Police will continue to do everything we can to hold those to account. But we are only one pillar of the justice system, and public safety is a shared responsibility for all justice sector partners. I'll now take the opportunity to address the number of homicides that we've experienced in the region during the last few weeks, which have been highly publicized and troubling. In 2024, there's been 15 homicides in York Region, with 5 taking place since July 25th, which is causing the community much concern. All of the victims in these cases were targeted. These were not random crimes. However, we do understand that these crimes can shake our community to its core and are extremely tragic for victims' family members and loved ones. For them, we're committed to finding justice and restoring a sense of safety in the community. Finally, we want to address the number of hate crimes we've experienced within the region. In 2024, hate crimes rose by 4% year over year. During the last year, we've definitely all seen how incidents of a global nature can easily impact our local community. YRP members are in regular contact with the leaders of all of our community faith groups, and our highly trained officers are working with the community whenever we experience these disturbing incidents. Over the last 2 weeks, York Region was subject to a nationwide bomb threat. That day and every day, when incidents like this occur, our officers are proactive and reach out to our faith leaders and visit places of worship to ensure that there is no threat to the community and people feel safe. York Region is one of the most diverse communities in all of Canada, which makes it a great place to live and raise a family. But there's zero tolerance for hate, and we'll continue to work with our partners, faith-based leaders, and all of our community to ensure we remain one of the safest communities in Canada. What we ask is for everyone to pay attention to your surroundings, chat with your neighbors, and if you see something out of the ordinary, say something. Don't hesitate to report it immediately to York Regional Police. Be an ambassador for your community. It's your home, and remember, crime prevention is a shared responsibility. If you witness a crime, call us immediately. And if you capture an incident on your phone, please be sure to share that information with our officers. In closing, I want to thank the entire community for their ongoing support and vigilance to ensure we remain a safe place to live and raise our families. And with that, I or we can take any questions you might have. In general, I would say there are many young people that are committing crimes in the region. The numbers are down slightly, but I can tell you, just as it relates to carjackings alone, there are many cases where we find young people brandishing handguns, victimizing community members, and then in short order, in some cases, back out on bail, out on the streets again.
Is it a situation where they might be recruited to do these types of, for carjacking specifically, or is that not related?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Is it a situation where they could be recruited to do these types of?
Yes. Short answer is yes. They can be recruited, and in some cases, in many cases, they are. Yes, sir.
Speaking to the homicides, what's kind of
Yeah, it's higher since last year. We're somewhere around 75%. Don't quote me on the number, but we are up over this time last year. I think this time last year we had around 8 homicides. We're at 15 so far this year. Yeah.
And in terms of the tow truck conversation, I know there's been some new legislation and rules that have come into play. What is your team seeing in terms of the impact of that on the ground? Is that causing the bad actors to behave better, or are you kind of seeing the same degree or higher degrees of criminal activity even with the new rules that have come into place since the start of the year?
Well, I can maybe ask the deputy to speak to this, but I'll start by saying, you know, when one tow truck agency is removed from the whole system of tow trucks, what happens is bad actors come back in and try and fill that gap. That's generally what occurs, and that's what we see from time to time occurring, which causes some of the violence in that tow truck regime, right? I can turn it over to Deputy Chief Almeida to maybe give you a few more specifics on that.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for the question. And certainly the legislation has assisted in our officers being able to enforce the legislation to ensure compliance. However, that also allows the criminal element to find any sort of vulnerability in the legislation, otherwise known as registering businesses and people that don't have criminal records. So there is always a criminal element in the background. But it's allowed our officers to strictly enforce and have the ability to have contact with these tow truck drivers to ensure that they're in compliance with the law.
And just to follow up on that, my next question on that is I've covered cases to resolution where you had a homicide where someone was targeted outside of a Christmas party a few years ago and shot and killed, was tracking device based on his vehicle. Are you seeing where it's just isolated to the people who are combating each other or competing, or are you finding this now spiraled into a situation where they're shooting at public residents or shooting at commercial spaces? What are you seeing in terms of how these crimes are being carried out against the people in play?
Absolutely. So the crimes are targeted. However, as you mentioned, when they're spraying bullets in residential areas, there is a potential for members of the public to be injured. Even with the arsons, when you have vehicle fires, there's a strong possibility if that vehicle is located next to a residence or residences that people are put at risk. So there is a massive public safety issue with this ongoing tow truck war.
Just for any other questions, there is a microphone here. If you have any questions, you can go to the microphone and ask them.
Sure. I think she wants you to use the microphone.
Hi, I just want to know which area in York Region experience gun violence and carjacking most?
I can't say it's attributed to any one area. What I would say is it's predominantly in the south end of York Region, across the south, the southern 3 cities in the region, right? Where we border Toronto, we know those borders are porous, and it's as if there isn't a border. So the reality is that's the majority of all of our carjackings in the south end.
Okay, and also it seems the crime pattern changed from auto theft to carjacking. Is it a good sign to the police?
Yeah, so we do see that trend, but the reality is they're both happening at the same time. As an example, we had a few vehicles that were stolen overnight a few nights ago, and in many of those cases, both the homeowners had their keys and the car was still stolen, right? But yet we see these carjackings occurring as well. And, in many cases, as I mentioned before, the carjackings are happening, and there's a lot of young people involved, right? And they're very brazen, and they're using weapons and firearms and, stealing people's vehicles. So there's not one trend over another, but carjackings are on the rise, as I mentioned, and it's concerning for us, and it always comes with violence and robbery. So, that's why we're dedicating this task force to combating that, to make sure we take care of that.
Okay, thank you. My last question is any border control strategies that YRP has involved in combating the smuggling problem?
Smuggling of?
The border control, any border control
Guns?
strategy? Yeah, of gun.
We work with Canada Border Services regularly. It's one of our partners, and you know, it's a federal issue. They deal with the borders just like the Port of Montreal is a federal issue when we're dealing with cars. But we do work closely. We have a great partnership with Canada Border Services. So, you know, it's hard for us to say what should be done at the border. The detection, finding better ways to detect guns coming across the border is really what has to happen, and more inspections. But the reality is that's not in our purview. We deal with it when it ends up in our region, but we do contact and work with them on a day-to-day basis, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, and are project-based as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Chief.
Hi.
We know that carjackings are up all over Ontario, really, but 106% in York Region over 5 years, that's a lot. Why do we think such a sharp increase in this region?
Yeah, so over 5 years, it was 400%, 106 over this time last year.
Okay.
Look, you know, York Region is an affluent, we have a lot of affluent areas in York Region, and people are operating, they have nice vehicles, they have high-end vehicles. Owning a high-end vehicle that is a targeted vehicle can put you at risk, right, of becoming a victim. And so what we're doing is trying to deal with it from an education standpoint. We know we can't enforce our way out of this problem, right? That's not going to be the solution. But we have to make sure we have dedicated resources in place to hold those to account when it does occur, right? And we're doing that. But there's an education component and a prevention component, and that's where the community comes in to help us, because it is a shared responsibility. If you can park your car in your garage, park your car in your garage. We've said that many times before. Be aware of your surroundings. Keep your doors locked. If you think your vehicle is potentially a targeted vehicle, keep your doors locked. Don't put yourself in a position to be a victim. But people can only do so much, right?
Hey, Chief. So you mentioned there was a lot of carjackings, and we're kind of seeing that in all the headlines. But what are you seeing here in Newmarket and Aurora in terms of, it seems like there aren't as many carjackings up here. Are there different crimes that are happening here, or are there?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I'm not saying they're not happening here. I'm saying they do happen from time to time, but predominantly where this trend is occurring is in the South End, as I mentioned. But the highest population of our region resides in the 3 South End cities as well. So it's an opportunity for people to have more access to higher-end vehicles, right? Are there crimes occurring in Newmarket and Aurora? Yes, there are crimes occurring, different types of crimes. I don't have the specifics here to say what's happening. We can take that offline, definitely provide you some information. I would welcome you to go to our community safety data portal, which is accessible to everybody in the community right on our website, and you can see at the click of a button what's actually happening in any municipality in the region.
Right. And in terms of the homicides, Newmarket, we had our first homicide of the year in July there. Are you concerned that there could be a trend of homicides up in Newmarket here, or do you feel like that was kind of a one-off incident?
I'm not concerned that there's a trend in homicides, but I'm going to turn it over to the deputy. He can provide some more insight.
Thanks very much for the question. And so we've been advocating that a number of these homicides have been targeted. But I will say the one concern that we do have is the homicides that are in relation to gender-based violence and intimate partner violence are of major concern to us, and this is something that we continue to beat the drum around the community for members of the community to assist us in giving us, the advance warning that something is on the horizon. It's unfortunate, but that is one area where we do see that intimate partner violence is the major cause of a lot of these homicides. And as much as we do to raise awareness around this issue, we need the media's help and we need the public's help to assist us in raising that alarm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chief. Sorry, just an additional question about the youth that are involved in these cases. Can you just speak a little bit more about why youth are being targeted, and if it's in the same for carjackings as it is for the tow truck turf wars, if it's sort of a similar reason and how they're being recruited?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the young people are targeted as much on the tow truck industry as consistently as they would be for the carjackings. Look, this is, to me, flashing a lot of money in front of young people who may not have access to finances. It's alluring for them to be part of it, and that's a big part of what's going on here, right? Is that you've got these young people who are robbing people of their vehicles in many cases, but I don't want to make this just about young people. That's not the case here. The question initially was, are there young people being involved? The answer is yes. Is it all young people? No, but they are involved. It's concerning for us, and at the end of the day, when, as I mentioned, it's really a monetary issue. It's a financial issue, and the whole carjacking, car theft issue, we have to stop stop it somewhere in the chain of events that occurs. And as we've educated people in the past, there's many actors in this process to get a vehicle to the port and then from the port out of the country, right? Somewhere in that chain of events, we have to put an end to it. And whether it's at the port or whether it's at the shipping companies or whatever, that's where we'll have real impact on putting an end to this trend, this critical issue for the GTA, because nowhere else in Canada are they experiencing the rise like we are here in Ontario. So it is unique to this area, although it is happening elsewhere. But putting a stop in that trend somewhere along that line will have an impact. That's why we've worked so hard with the Port of Montreal, the Port Authority, to try and figure out what more can be done to inspect vehicles on the way out of the country versus on the way in, because we know if you can't sell them, if you can't move them out of the country, that's going to have a huge impact on this issue of car theft and carjackings.
And just a question on a specific case, the attempted kidnapping at Vaughan Mills. Is there any update on that specific case in terms of suspects or why this individual in particular was targeted?
Yeah, I don't have an update on that case at this point, but we can definitely do a follow-up with you and provide any information on that.
Hello, Chief. My question is about those crimes are getting violent, and those offenders that they're repeated offenders. So, what's your police plan to combat those crimes? And do you have a plan like to increase invest in surveillance system or some other programs to combat those crimes? Thank you.
You want to take it? Yeah, I'll turn it over to the deputy. He'll
Thank you. And as the chief mentioned in his comments earlier, that a lot of work's been done around bail reform. So starting from that perspective, ensuring that there is legislation in place right now that allows us to hold offenders in custody. And the more the police can bring offenders to court, but it's just we're one pillar of that justice system to keep offenders in custody that need to be kept in custody. The challenge is that there's been a lot of work done, and we've seen a very good result lately of offenders being held in custody, of significant sentences being offered for violent crimes such as robbery, commercial robberies. So that's a positive increase or positive result that we've seen from the advocacy from the chief as the president of OACP and other police leaders throughout this province and throughout the country. So all we continue to do is to raise this issue around bail reform and ensuring that once members are brought before the court, that the proper measures that are in place, that if they need to be held in custody, they should be held in custody. Otherwise, they should be showing cause as to why they should be released. And more often than not, we find it's the other way around. So, there is a pendulum swing coming back in the direction where we realize that a lot of these youth that are involved in these crimes are recidivists. They've been in for the same offense, they get released, and they're back on the street again, only to be arrested again and then be re-released. So it's an issue that we're only one part of the justice system, and we continue to beat the drum and encourage the media to highlight that issue that we're currently facing. Thank you.
We just have time for 2 more questions.
Okay, my apologies. The case of the woman who was found with another jarring case of someone disappearing and then being found dead as a part of your team investigation. They charges in one that happened only 2 weeks before. This one, we have some young people who have been charged with some other cases of fraud and theft of property, since they were in possession of some property belonging to the deceased woman. Have you made any headway with that investigation in terms of a potential suspect or someone that might be actually charged with the homicide or the murder charge?
We have, and I'm not prepared to comment on that at the moment. We will be coming out with a release with some significant information on that specific case. I'm just waiting for a few things to be finalized before we bring that forward to the public. I didn't say that. I said there's been developments in that case. Thank you.
Sorry, question for the chief. I believe the residents are taking tips from the police service, taking more proactive measures to protect their vehicle, put their cars into the garage and things. That might be the reason of the auto thefts that are done. Is it because of the carjacking, the residents have no way to protect them, so vulnerable? That's the reason for the 106% increase on carjacking?
Look, I think you raise a good point, which is that when they're not able to steal the vehicles, they resort to violent means, which is exactly what we see from time to time, right? Which is likely why we're seeing this trend. So that's why we ask everyone to be vigilant when they are out in their vehicle and that vehicle happens to be the type of vehicle that has been targeted to be stolen, either through a carjacking or just out of a garage or a driveway, right? So it's a troubling issue, and which is exactly why we're going to dedicate this task force to the carjacking issue specifically, because we know that trend cannot continue, right? And we're going to do everything we can to stop it and to hold those to account and keep them in custody and remove them from our streets and put them right where they belong, right? We need to make sure, and this goes back to the deputy's point on bail, right? I've been singing this song for too long now, which is that people should not be out on the streets after committing a gun crime to be able to commit another gun crime and victimize the community. Like, that's unacceptable. But it shouldn't take every premier in Ontario or across the country to write a letter to get change around bail reform. We shouldn't get there. We shouldn't have to get there, right? We've got enough evidence out in the community right now to demonstrate there's a need to continue to work on this, right? So that's what I call on everyone to be doing in that justice sector, is to do everything we can to keep those off the street who shouldn't be on the street time and time again, victimizing people with firearms or with other types of weapons.
Forgive me if this question's been asked.
Okay.
No problem. Forgive me if this has already been asked, but do we have a percentage on how many of these criminals are reoffenders when it comes to carjackings? Like a percentage number?
I don't have that number specifically that have been released or out on bail that are reoffending. This is something that we are working on, and we're actually working on a more dedicated dashboard to be able to provide that on a moment's notice. But all I can say is, in general terms, we do see it on a regular basis where people that are out on bail are reoffending and committing other types of violent crimes, including carjackings. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
We want to thank everyone for attending today. That concludes the press conference. We will make some time for one-on-one interviews. If you can please see Constable James Dixon and Constable Lisa Musclock in order to arrange that. Thank you.